Oh, hi there, guys. So, just wanted to do a quick video on Lucy Connolly's release from prison yesterday. So, for those who are living under a rock, she was the woman who was jailed for posting a tweet which called for the burning down of asylum seeker hotels. But I wanted to think in this video about what is the purpose of prison, and whether we can look at what Lucy Connolly does over the coming months as evidence or otherwise of its effectiveness. So, generally speaking, the prison serves a number of purposes. So it's punishment for a crime, it's a chance to rehabilitate someone who commits a dangerous act or who holds dangerous views. And more broadly, it's also a function of sort of shared responsibility within a society. So in this instance, she was sent down for inciting racial hatred. If you look back at her tweet now, you can see it's just full of anger and hatred. And also it was obviously rooted in racism. I'm not sure anyone is disputing any of that. She pleaded guilty, so presumably she understood that. So I wanted to think, in this case, what would rehabilitation look like for Lucy Connolly? So for me, I think we'd want to be thinking about, what are her thought processes and her attitudes, and particularly her thought processes and attitudes when she's upset or angry. So, in prison, I could imagine they might be offering her something like CBT or similar. So that's cognitive behavioural therapy, with a view to changing some of those thoughts and attitudes, perhaps helping her manage her impulsivity or challenging her rigid thinking. And then I suppose as well in prison, there's also just a huge amount of dead time, isn't there? So I'd imagine there's a lot of time for reading and for self-reflection. So I hope she's been sort of pointed in the right direction on that front. From my point of view, I'd encourage her to start with an old favourite of mine. So if anyone's read it, Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent, the political economy of the mass media. And that would be with a view to helping her understand her function and role within the right-wing media ecosystem over the course of the last year. And I say that because, over the course of the last year, she's been the cause célèbre for the right wing. I haven't gone a single day, I don't think, without someone invoking her sentence as an example of two-tier justice. And of course, now she's out, she's going to be inundated with requests for interviews, from the usual suspects. She'll probably have offers of employment from places like GB News or Talk TV. And the reality is that in the sort of febrile political atmosphere that exists today, the actual person gets lost. And I think we all know how this works by now. Individual people, they're just used to advance a sort of a specific political agenda, and then when their usefulness runs out, they're just discarded at the drop of a hat. So I think it'd be really easy for Lucy Connolly to just slip back into the right-wing ecosystem, fall back into easy habits, internalise that feeling and that belief that you've been wronged, because that's what you're being told every day, and for her to just take the easy road, really, never having to engage in any sort of introspection or self-reflection again. And the truth of the situation is, she's not going to be able to go back to what she did before. There's no way she can go back into childminding, is there? She's not getting a DBS certificate after this. So what is she going to do for money, I'm slightly worried because I saw on Twitter earlier today that one of her first phone calls after being released from prison was to Dan Wootton and to Alison Pearson. And that doesn't really scream self-reflection to me. So I think this could go sort of one or two ways, really. Either she could just sort of withdraw from public life and just try to get back to some sort of normality, whatever that looks like. Or effectively she's just going to be used by the sort of powerful forces on the right who have martyred her. And I think, unfortunately, if she goes down that latter route, she'll get chewed up and spat out at some point, as is always the way, or she'll have to continually go further and further right to stay relevant. And that's therefore going to undermine any good that might have come from her time in prison, if there is any good to come from it. So I think it's pretty bleak, really. For what it's worth, I hope she goes the right way. I believe that people can change, but then also know that the right-wing ideology that's so pervasive in our society at the moment, and the trappings of money and fame, are very powerful. So it'd be interesting to see what happens over the coming months. But thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.